Welcome back to the Dirt Road. I'm here with Rick,
That's Mike.
and we're going to be discussing Ukraine today.
I feel a little bit better now after my last video.
Called Trump a moron.
Yeah, Donald, I'm not apologizing to you. I'm just not. Anyway,
I apologize for him, but
big. Listen, Mike, you know the way I feel about this particular topic we're going to talk about in this video.
sure.
I don't think there's more. I don't think there's a more important event going on in this world right now than the war between Russia and Ukraine. And I honestly believe we're living through the first 2 or 3 chapters of a future book on World War III.
I would agree.
I really do.
I mean, look, the neocons want that, right? That's like their fantasy dream coming to life. They're creaming their pants right now.
Yeah.
You know, they're already counting the trillions they think they're going to make on this as people die in the hundreds of thousands. So, Ukraine.
Well, a big change happened in the last couple of days. Ukraine they went balls out and they invaded the Kursk area of Russia. They've done cross-border incursions before.
Nothing like this.
No, nothing like this. This is a big one. Nobody really knows what the reason is. And again, they're doing it with our weapons and our money, and that's why this is our business, right? I mean, the Ukrainians have every right to fight this war and prosecute this war however they want.
Sure.
But if it's our money and if it's our weapons, we ultimately can get involved. This is the way, before we get into the actual events that happened in Kursk, from the first day that this went on, there had to have been a conversation in the Oval Office. Had to have been. Once we decided we were going to do this little mini Lend-Lease sort of a thing, and wars, as you know way better than I do, take on a life of their own.
Sure.
Right? So however they start.
Yep.
Whatever the plan is, the plan. But like Mike Tyson always said about boxing, every boxer has a plan until they get that first punch in the face.
Yes, that's true.
Then the plan changes. It has to. And there had to be a conversation in the Oval Office where somebody said to Joe Biden, Mr. President, this could spiral into World War III. Are you willing to risk it? And he had to have said yes, because we are as deeply involved as we are. And again, just like in the last video we did about Ukraine, it's not about right and wrong, Mike. That's not what history is. History is not about right and wrong, good and bad. Like I said in another video, that every history book would be one chapter, if that's what it was, right?
Right.
Hitler bad, Allies good,
yeah.
done. So it goes beyond that. There's more to it. And now this invasion, or counter-invasion, however you want to phrase it, into Kursk is really going to change the dynamics, not just of the war, but of the politics. And war is an extension of politics, right? That's what Sun Tzu said.
Yeah, physical manifestation of it, right?
Right. So this is a big event because we don't know what the goal is here. So some people are saying that the goal was that Ukraine wants Russia to have to divert troops to a different area because Ukraine has been getting their asses kicked on the front.
Pressure on the eastern side of the front, right?
I don't believe that, because they have to divert their troops too, and they also are limited, right? So
Exactly.
that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Other theories out there are they're trying to get the Russian people to rise up against Putin by getting the Russian. No, and anybody who knows anything about the Russians, once you put your soldiers on what they call the motherland,
It's over.
yeah,
You're done.
Again, we don't know for sure.
Napoleon, Hitler.
Sure. And we don't know for sure, but I would think, if anything, they're going to rally around him, because the hope is on the other side that the Russians will say, he got us into this, and now look, we're getting our people killed in our land. It doesn't work that way. Just like after 9/11, nobody was blaming Bush. Nobody was saying you were asleep at the wheel and our foreign policy led to this. We rallied around the flag.
That's right.
That's what you do. And in that area of the world especially, these people, they fight, man. These Slavs, they fight.
Oh yeah,
They fight.
No, they're tough as nails. They're not. These are not weak people.
No, they're not. And again, nobody knows, but I can't imagine that this would do anything but make Putin, at least temporarily, more popular.
Oh yeah.
And don't kid yourselves, he's very popular in Russia.
Well, yeah, he's loved.
They have this narrative out there that there's this enormous, group that's opposed to him, and he's just, putting the hammer down on them and so. No, it's not that way.
No.
So I don't know that that's a reason either. This is my theory, and you tell me what you think.
Okay.
I've thought for a long time 2 things. One, Ukraine's going to do a balls-out offensive before the American election.
Sure.
Because even if Harris gets elected, no matter which one of these guys gets elected, the policy's going to change.
Yeah.
I don't think either Harris or Trump are going to abandon Ukraine. I highly doubt that. But some parts of the policy are going to change, and I think Ukraine sees this as maybe their last chance to really get something going. But this is just a theory. I can't prove it, but I don't think that the Ukrainians' number one goal is to get the Russians out of Ukraine. I think their number one goal is to get Americans in.
Yeah.
And I think what they're hoping by doing this is that the Russians will overreact and that they will do something that would even get maybe
Drastic.
China or India a little bit off their side. And the most drastic thing that they could do is declare war. Because if they, everybody makes fun that Putin called this a special military operation. Well, words matter. If you declare war, if he declares war right now in Ukraine, we immediately become a co-belligerent.
Yeah.
And it's World War III.
Yeah, because we're arming them.
Right. And then even more than that. So if he declares war, if the Russians, I don't know how they work it, if the Duma has to do it or if he does it on his own, but whatever. If they declare war, Mike, it's World War III.
Yeah.
Because they will then start hitting our weapons caches in Poland.
Yep.
They'll hit supply lines.
Yep.
Because a war is different than a special military operation.
Because of the war, you open up the door to all these other kind of extra attacks that are not carrying out right now. You open up the door to say, like, bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail or whatever to stop the supply routes or whatever. So you could bomb in Poland, you could bomb in other areas and say, well, it's under the auspices that we're stopping this war.
And then the neocons can say, see, I told you so, he's a madman, he's attacking NATO.
Even though they're the ones who actually generated this whole thing and started it.
Exactly. And again, this is not about, I've said this on another podcast that we did. I'm not against Ukraine.
Not at all.
I'm against all policies.
Yeah.
That's what I'm against.
I don't want to see, the Ukrainian people have every right to defend themselves. They do.
Yes, they do.
The shame of this whole thing is that the Ukrainian people didn't create this mess, not them individually. Their government is corrupt and has been since 2014 when Victoria Nuland and the rest of our disgraceful State Department overturned their government and brought in these people and made this what it is. So we carry this blood. We carry the blame for this. Well, our politicians and our bureaucrats do with their disgustingly backwards policies and their stupid ideas. But, what I think of this offensive, I have to agree with you. I don't think there's any military gain to be had by doing it.
No.
It's showmanship of the worst kind because you're sacrificing men and women's lives for nothing more than political gain. That's really what it comes down to. I think that we're at a point now where Zelensky realizes that either way the kind of golden times are coming to an end,
right.
And he's got to do something to try and it's like when you stop paying attention to a kid, right? And they do more and more dramatic things to get your attention, And neocons and those like Blinken and them, Nuland, they know that. They know he's desperate. They know they can pull his strings. And I'm sure this was conceived or contrived in some stupid headshed somewhere where they were like, oh, we'll do this big display of like, look, they invaded Russia and they can win this war and there should be hope for Ukraine and there's a reason we're giving them all this money.
So yeah, it might be to inspire their people or inspire
not inspire
us
theirs, but inspire us.
Right.
I think this is their way. I think you're right. I think the globalists and the neocons are working together to try and drag this thing into World War III.
Yeah, and that's what I think Zelensky is hoping, is that Putin does overreact to this, because there's going to be a lot of pressure on him politically at home to do something. Because this was not just one of those border incursions into Belgorod or drones.
Right, just over the border, or maybe a drone attack.
This is pretty big.
Yeah, it was an actual military offensive into Mother Russia.
Now, they're not going to march to Moscow, we all know that. So that's not what I mean by big. But this was a lot of soldiers and a lot of armored vehicles, and they're our armored vehicles, and they are our bullets, and they're getting paid by our money. So we have every right to put limits on them.
Sure.
People said Biden was weak for doing that. No. I mean, this is, again, something that Biden knows full well can get us into World War III, and he doesn't get to choose that.
Yeah.
He doesn't get to choose that if the Russians react in a certain way.
Sure.
And I do believe that Zelensky is, and I don't blame him, but I think he's lost his damn mind over the last year or so.
I think Zelensky's I think he was corrupted from day one. I don't
He
think
was.
the man ever had any semblance of.
But Mike, we
ability
dragged his ass into this, as you said.
Well, we put him there. We put him up as a puppet.
We did,
and we staged this entire thing, and we instigated Russia into attacking.
We did, and you know what? Call me a Putin puppet. I don't care. These people, they love alliteration.
Kiss my ass with that shit.
I know.
Yeah,
Putin
such
puppet.
nonsense. Just stop.
If Putin's last name began with another letter, we couldn't call people Putin puppets. It's not about Putin puppet. It's about understanding what's going on. There was absolutely no reason for us right on the eve of this war, right on the eve of it, as they were amassing their troops, to say Ukraine's going to be in NATO. That was completely antagonistic.
No, because
the only reason for that was to, stick it up Putin's ass.
Well, no, because Putin drew a line in the sand, right? He staged his troops on the border and said, back off. And what did we do? We said, oh, you know what? We're going to step over that line now. Now what are you going to do? And he invaded.
Yeah.
They wanted this war. They wanted this invasion.
They did.
The defense industry, because
By
of how
they,
much
you mean
arms they
America.
could sell. By the neocons and the world, the globalists. Because they want to destabilize Russia. They want to destabilize the world. They want to see the war and all the death and everything that comes with it. They really are a death cult, and I'm not just talking about the left here. I'm talking about these people who like this kind of shit.
No, they're on the right
this is
too.
a good thing. Yeah, they're on the right.
Lindsey Graham is
Lindsey
a
Graham.
Republican, and George W. Bush and all this. It's bipartisan.
The neocon and unholy alliance for the neocon and the globalist left. So I agree with you. I think that the offensive is at the end of the day is pointless, right? I think it's nothing more than dramatics to show maybe they have a shot.
Unless they can get Putin to overreact, do something so bad that it would drag the Allies into the war.
I think Putin's smarter than that, though. Listen, I think if
But
I'm
he's
being
going to
honest,
face political pressure at home, Mike.
well, of course he is.
He's got to hold on to power too.
Listen, he's got hardliners in his own country. Absolutely, he's got the hardliners who are going to be like, sharpening their knives, like, oh, this might be our chance to get this guy out. There's always those hardliners, those people who want to be the king, right? That's always going to be the case. So he's definitely got to deal with that. But he's very politically astute. I mean, the man survived politics in Russia for how many years already as president? In various
quarter
positions.
of a century.
Yeah, as in various positions running that country. You don't get there and stay there in a country like that without being extremely aware.
No, he's not a stupid man by
No.
any stretch of the imagination, nor is he Hitler. Or,
No,
like
he's
we
not
said in
Hitler.
another video, nor is he Abraham Lincoln. But
No, not at all.
But what bothers me is that, if you've been paying attention to this whole thing, the reasons for this war constantly change, right? It started off as this is autocracy versus democracy,
Right.
which was nonsense. But, all right, we could get behind that. Most people could also get behind the idea that a country's not supposed to invade another country unless they're in imminent danger, right? But if that were the real reason, Mike, if it were really about that, then Biden should have done like George H.W. Bush with Kuwait and Iraq, got a coalition together and said, we're going in with a limited task to get the Russians back on their side of the border. But that was never the reason. And you could see that because they constantly change the narrative. So one day it's about that. The next day we hear this ridiculous thing. I remember Chris Christie saying this, which blew my mind, but others
Krispy
have said it too. Yeah.
Himself?
He said, this is about sending a message to China, right? Because the Chinese are going to see that we're serious, and therefore they won't invade Taiwan. So this is about... So if you notice, we have two types of warmongers in this country, right? I call them the send a message group and the all we need to do group. The all we need to do group is Lindsey Graham. Right? All we need to do is blow up Iran's oil fields, and blah, blah, as if there's not going to be any reaction. We're going to do this, and the other side.
Bubble,
as if they're just going to fold, and that's it, and it's all over.
Well, they want you to think that so they could do it, and then when it turns into a war, they'd be like, "Well, we didn't know that bullshit." They knew they were going to make about $1 billion on selling the arms for this thing.
But that's constantly their message, right? All we need to do is this, and they never talk about the reaction as if the other side, as if the Russians or the Iranians.
And this all happens in a void, There's no reaction,
and they're just going to go, "Oh my God, America's mad. We better stop." The world doesn't work that way.
No.
But the sending a message to China, two things crossed my mind when Christie said. Number one, do Ukrainian wives and mothers know this? Are they aware of the fact that their sons and husbands are dying, so some obese ex-governor of New Jersey can send a message to China? It blows my mind. But Mike, if a message is being sent to China, you know what the message is? The more deeply we're involved in a European war, the message is, go ahead and invade Taiwan. We're tied up over here.
Yeah, we're not fighting two fronts. This ain't World War II, and we're not ready.
Right. So if we're involved in a land war in Europe,
forget it.
Then the Chinese can do whatever the hell they want.
They can invade the West Coast and probably get
so it's counterproductive. Then they change the reason to, well, we need to give Ukraine the best negotiating leverage in order. Well, okay, fine. When do those negotiations start exactly?
Right around the time where Britain's Prime Minister on our behalf shut down those negotiations.
Right.
On the State Department's behalf. Exactly.
So it's a fistful of lies.
Yep.
And now we really are on the cusp of it could be World War III
Sure.
at any time, because again, the decision is really not ours. If Putin loses his shit over this, over what's going on now,
Tactical nuke or something at that
so
level.
who knows? I don't. Hopefully, he's not stupid enough to do that. But this could be something that we get dragged into, and I really do feel like we're living in 1939, 1940, sort of the pre-American.
We are.
involvement.
We absolutely are. So we're at that inflection point where it's like, all right, you got that crossroads, right? The divergent road where we can go this way or we can go this way. And this way takes us back to, a stable, secure world where the dying stops and we're able to kind of put things back to where they belong and kind of get people back in their corners and fix this shit. Or we can go this way and turn it into a fucking hellscape. And that's what it is. It's gonna be a hellscape because who pays the price in these wars, right? It's not soldiers die. Soldiers die in war. That's a given. Everybody knows that. What people don't talk about is the human cost. Aside from that, how much infrastructure is destroyed? How much is that nation set back? How many generations are dead and lost? How many civilians starve to death, die, whatever? The trauma of it all. How many generations are going to be affected by it? It doesn't just stop there.
Right.
That shit reverberates through time, and
Right.
it's going to be a ripple. That's
And
going to be
Ukraine is
just-
forever changed over this, right?
Without a doubt.
They've
It's
lost
never
a
gonna be
ton
the
of their
same.
population. It's something that could have been avoided. And again, bottom line, yes, the Russians were wrong for invading, but just life isn't that simple, and history isn't that simple. It goes well beyond that, and the lies and the brainwash. Mike, when they voted for the $60 billion to go to Ukraine a few months ago, the United States Congress was waving Ukrainian flags.
Fucking
That was one of the
scumbag. It
most
pissed me off.
bizarre things
No, it made me
I've
angry.
ever seen. I mean, we have really thrown our lot in with a foreign nation.
Well, you know what they were doing, right?
What?
They were cheering for the money laundering operation that's paying them all because they're a bunch of corrupt scumbags. That was the most disgusting thing I ever saw, and it pissed me off to know it. First of all, why we're sending them $60 billion when we're already how many trillions of dollars in debt? No, done. Second of all, how dare they stand on the floor of our house?
Yes.
It's my house, your house, that's your house, right? That's Congress. It belongs to fucking us. Just like the White House belongs to fucking us, right? Our forebears paid the price in blood for all these things that we have, and it's being sold out right from under you, and they're doing it publicly and waving the country's flag while they fucking do it.
It's
Fuck
bizarre.
them. It is disgusting. It is backwards. It is wrong.
Yeah, and bizarre, just bizarre. And how many of these people who are out there waving Ukrainian flags on their own now would really send their son over there to fight?
Well, that's just it. They don't
Almost
have to,
not.
right? Because the wealthy can, virtue signal and say, oh, it's great that they're doing this. But the moment you try and take their son, they're going to have some senator, somebody else call, oh, no, he can't go. Right?
But just the brainwashing that's going on. How many people who watch this video will call us Putin puppets or, fascists or this and that, just for having an opinion on war? And like I said in the last video, this country has always had vibrant anti-war movements
Yeah.
in every war. Where is the Michael Moore video about this war? There is none. Where are the protests about? There is none. It's almost repressive. It's like people don't dare say anything.
Well, yeah,
And
because they
it's
chose
mind-boggling.
Yeah, because the mass media and everybody involved chose their side and their marching orders, and Ukraine is the biggest money laundering operation in the world, has been since 2014 at the least. And when you take that and you take the constant brainwashing and gaslighting of the mass media on all sides now, mind you, for the last 10 years about Putin being this Hitler type character, which is just not true. Is the guy a bit authoritarian? Yeah, definitely. Is he very, very aggressive? Absolutely. The Georgian conflict proved that quite well.
Sure.
But that being said, he is the penultimate Russian leader. This is what they respect. This is what they understand. These are very strong, hardy, tough people.
Right.
They're not going to respect this polished Romney type.
But we
or
get
Biden.
lied to all the time where we hear that he's so unpopular in Russia. He is not unpopular
No,
in
he's
Russia.
extremely popular.
He's quite popular. And we hear all of these other lies too. Remember when the war first started, they were going to win in 3 days. The Russians are so tough. Then 2 weeks later, we're hearing that they're a paper tiger. They're a gas station with nukes. Remember that?
Oh, yeah.
So
I remember that
it's
comment.
constantly changing the narrative over and over again. But it all comes down to just this brainwashing to prepare us for a war.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is. I think they're setting the stage, right? So when you're playing chess, right, and you're setting your board, you're doing your initial moves, your pieces, you're setting the board for whatever your penultimate goal is to win, right? But you're setting the board up. You're getting your pieces ready to kind of annihilate your opponent, and that's what they're doing. They're setting the board for the global stage to say, okay, move this here, instigate this, instigate that. And what they're trying to do is, they're trying to initiate a land war in Europe. They want World War III.
Because I think almost everything that we've done is backfired, and they're getting to the point now where there is no other option. The sanctions didn't work.
No, they have BRICS, which
at all. I mean, they did hurt Russia a little bit, but this whole idea of sanctions, where we've waged economic warfare for the last, 30 years or so. Number one, it doesn't work. Right? We've had sanctions on Cuba forever. It didn't get their communist government out.
No.
And the whole idea that you're going to impoverish people, and that's going to turn them to our side. No, I mean, they're going to rally around their own government even more.
Yeah, because
and
you're
hate
attacking
us
them
even
economically. Yeah.
Exactly. So now you have this whole fleet out there going around the world that is avoiding U.S. sanctions, bringing Russian oil everywhere and gold and all of these things. So they figured out ways to circumvent this, so that hasn't worked. The Russian military, as you explained in one of our prior videos, has actually gotten stronger and more well-run.
And they will.
Than it was.
They shook the cobwebs out. The Russian military hadn't really had major conflict in a very, very long time.
So what's the point of this?
And now they're doing combined arms. They're doing all these other things that they hadn't really. The things that the one thing that made us like a big military superpower and really fearful for other countries on the world stage was our combined arms, right? Our ability to kind of take all these various disparate forces and make them all work together at the same time for a common goal. Where other nations couldn't do this, they didn't have the capability, whatever. And now Russia has adopted that and taken it to the fucking next level. And it scares the shit out of people like Lindsey Graham, which I can thank Putin for that at least, So maybe I'll apologize to Putin for that because fuck Lindsey Graham. But, it definitely changed the game, and it definitely changed the world, honestly, because now Russia's got a much, much bigger saber to rattle because they can say, look, yes, we can do these things.
But the Ukrainians are a lot stronger too. This whole idea that the Ukrainians are outnumbered is a lie. The Russians do have a bigger military, but in theater, they each have about 500,000 to 600,000 men. Remember, the Russians do have a bigger military, but they also have 11 time zones to defend, right? I mean,
they're not moving the guys off the Siberian coast.
No, I mean, from Vladivostok to St. Petersburg,
right? You're talking thousands of miles of border.
On the front line, there are areas where the Ukrainians outnumber the Russians. Apparently in Kursk, right? I mean, they were able to. They found a weak point and pushed through. Of course, and that it was, at least it looks like, a very smart maneuver. But in the end, Mike, the Ukrainians, and this is just a guess, nobody can know. I do believe that there's going to be a massive offensive that they're going to launch. Maybe this is a diversionary tactic, I don't know, but they're going to launch a massive offensive. They are going to go all in. This whole thing that they have no manpower, I don't believe it, because number one, they wouldn't have done this incursion into Kursk if they really had a manpower issue. Number two, they wouldn't be announcing they have a manpower issue if they really did, right?
Yeah, they're trying to cover that up.
Of course, and over again, they're talking about how they're so outnumbered and they have a manpower issue and they don't have enough men to man the line. They wouldn't be saying this. This is coming from their Ministry of Defense. If it was true. Everything that comes out of anybody's mouth in a war is a lie, right? I mean, the informational war is part of the war.
That's part of the war, is the disinformation thing. How much can you make your enemy believe by it's not true?
Sure.
Sure, absolutely. Listen, I think it's I'll give them credit. That's a hell of a push, right? It's a hell of an offensive.
Was ballsy, yeah.
It's a hell of an offensive. I'll give them credit for the offensive. But I do think it's nothing more than a drama play or a means to try and bring attention back onto the cause, so to speak, and give Zelensky some kind of, bump back up to the stardom level of on the world stage.
They're about 25 kilometers away from the Kursk nuclear power plant, which could be one of their goals, is to get to that and use that as a bargaining chip.
Sure.
I don't know, but I just don't believe this whole idea of bargaining chips anymore or negotiating leverage, because the negotiations never happen.
Yeah, I don't think so. I know Putin put out recently if Trump wins the election, he'd be happy to sit down with him and discuss peace talks or whatever. And he told that to Zelensky, and Zelensky also said he'd be willing to sit down and have peace talks. So I'm it makes me wonder, a couple of weeks ago, Zelensky's talking about peace talks, and now he's doing this big push into Kursk, into Russia.
Well,
it's like
there's no peace talks anymore.
that's just
not
it.
happening.
Like, why shoot yourself in the foot? Like, how many more of your own countrymen do you want to see die?
Because I don't think he wants peace talks, Mike. I don't think he wants peace.
No, I don't think he wants peace at all. Because while this war rages, he gets to be a little authoritarian dictator asshole.
Right, because his presidential term ended in March. I think it was
he
March.
suspended
March or
all
May.
elections. Yeah.
Right, so there's no elections in his beacon of democracy.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know, I mean, we had elections in our Civil War.
Yeah.
And Lincoln thought he was going to lose, and he
Yeah.
still had the elections, and he could have declared martial law maybe.
Right. He could. He
And-
suspended habeas corpus
Yeah.
during the war.
But he still held an election.
still held
An
an
election
election.
he was convinced he was going to
Gonna
lose to
lose.
McClellan.
Yep.
But Ukraine can't have an election, and it just, the whole thing is just lie after lie after lie, and I don't understand. And again, you know, look, if somebody disagrees with me on this, you know, I'm not going to call you Hitler and do all of those things that other people do when you
You're
disagree
Hitler.
with them. You know, have a different point of view. That's fine, but at least know what the hell is going on.
Well, yeah, know the facts of what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
Not just your emotional. Well, I feel like, okay, if you start what I feel like, we're probably just going to disregard what you have to say. The feel like thing, I hate that crap, right? Just give me some facts, give me some thoughts, give me some experience or some knowledge that makes sense and that you understand the region, you understand the history, and you understand what realistically is probably going on there.
And
We're happy to debate that, happy to hear your side, happy to hear
absolutely.
everything about
No,
it.
tell me I'm wrong, but you know, tell me why.
But bring some receipts with you, bring some facts with you.
But you know, we are supposed to learn lessons from history, right? So, but the
Absolutely.
one lesson that everybody seems to harp on all the time when it comes to things like this is appeasement. Like they're perpetually in Munich in 1938. We can't appease him. Like appeasement doesn't work. Appeasement doesn't work. Look at what happened to him. All right, that was one event in history. First of all, I don't think the British could have stopped Hitler at that point in
No.
1930. If they were going to stop him, they had to stop him in 35
Yep.
when he reoccupied the Rhineland and did things like that.
Absolutely.
By 38, Hitler held the cards.
Yeah.
You know, that's
By
number
38, the machine was already built.
Absolutely.
It was already built. It was just gaining steam. It was
So,
already built.
did appeasement work? No, obviously, because World War II happened. But that doesn't mean that every time something happens, we have to say, well, you can't be the next Neville Chamberlain. You got to get in there and fight.
Yeah.
No, that can't be the answer either. Because we're not perpetually in 1938. This is not the Germans. He's not a Nazi.
No, it's a completely different world with a completely different set of
Right.
circumstances. You can't apply one or the other. It's apples and oranges. I agree 100%.
Yeah. And again, a lot of what we did was antagonistic.
Sure.
You know, and pushing him into this war. And again, it was his choice. I get it. Don't mock. You know, don't go after me in the comments and saying I'm defending Putin. No, he
Not
made
at
a
all.
choice.
He
made
chose.
a
He chose to invade.
He chose to invade. He didn't have.
But I
to.
definitely think we had a big part in antagonizing him.
We
there
did,
and
but he
bringing
didn't
it.
have to take the bait. But he did. You know, and here we are now with, you know, depending on the I mean, again, it's lie after lie after lie. Ukrainians are claiming 500,000 Russians dead, which is impossible. I mean, they went in there with 100,000 men. They have about 500,000 to 600,000 men in there now. They did not have 500,000 deaths. If they had 500,000 deaths, Zelensky would be smoking a cigar in the Kremlin right now.
Yeah.
You know, but they have a lot. You know, there was a lot.
No,
And
it's
the
a high
Ukrainians-
casualty count, I'm sure.
and the Ukrainians as well. And that's what I just, you know, every time somebody, whether it's Lindsey Graham saying Russians are dying, it's a great thing, or people defending this, don't you understand Ukrainians are dying? By the thousands upon thousands, Mike.
These are young men dying.
Yes.
Young men and young women dying on both sides. For no other reason than we have clowns in suits who think they're smarter than the rest of the world playing games with countries that have nuclear weapons.
Yes.
That is the fucking reality of that.
It is, and you know, and again, the fact is that if Ukraine wants to go into Kursk and if Ukraine wants to bomb Moscow, that's fine. That's on them. But these are all weapons, all money, and ultimately, you know, Putin has a reason to come after us, right? Because
Yeah, we're aligning ourselves with his enemy.
yes, because the Ukrainians are just as big a war criminals as the Russians, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
They're both sick. They fight sick. Civilians are getting killed like crazy
On both sides.
on both sides.
Yep.
And, you know, again, we hold these two to different standards, which is wrong.
Yeah.
You know, the Ukrainians are targeting civilians. The Russians, I don't know if they're targeting, but, you know, civilians do get killed in war.
It
We know
happens,
that,
yeah.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
But again, the bottom line is that for some reason in this country, for this one war, we're not allowed to discuss it. People watching this now, you know how pissed they're going to be at us just for even insinuating that maybe Putin had a reason for doing what he was doing.
So tell me why. Explain your position.
But why is it so
Bring your
offensive?
receipts and explain your position.
That's what I really want to explain is what is the emotional attack? If you don't have Russian or Ukrainian blood in you, What is the
Even
emotional
if you do,
attachment?
you should know better if you do.
But at least I'd understand it. If my neighbor was Ukrainian and had family over there, I would get it, right? But what is the emotional attachment that Americans have to this country? None. I just think that we've been brainwashed so much.
We have.
With all of this media.
Been fed a big basket of bullshit and nonsense.
Because the neocons got a gift in 2016, right? The Republican neocons, they got a gift. They had the Democrats claim that Putin stole the election for Trump.
Yeah.
Right? So now the people that would normally be anti-war on the left
have to get on their side.
Yeah, because when they look at Putin's face, they see Trump. They see a reason to have an enemy. That's the only reason I could think of that we haven't had an anti-war left here. We do have a little bit on the right, like J.D. Vance. I don't know if it's anti-war, but at least a little bit more sober about it. But on the left, it's almost unanimous that we need to fight, or we need to help the Ukrainians fight this war.
Yep.
And I really, truly believe it's because when these people see Putin's face, they see Trump. They see in their mind the reason for a 4-year Trump presidency. And they see the most evil man in the world.
Yeah, because he brought their boogeyman to life.
Yeah.
In their minds, he brought their boogeyman to life.
Yeah.
How dare Trump, make them see the truth and the reality of things.
But I really hope that what's going on now doesn't lead Putin to overreact, because again, counter to the narrative that's out there, Mike, for the last 6-8 months, maybe even a year, the Russians have been very measured and very risk averse. Very opposite of what they were the first year of this war.
They went in the first year, they went hyper aggressive.
Yeah.
They went in, they pushed right up into, right into Ukraine, deep into Ukraine.
But they've been
and then
very
they kind of
measured.
pushed back, and now the lines became kind of static, and it became almost like World War I with the trench warfare. It was a very static kind of lines.
Or like Korea, right at the beginning of the Korean War, the
War,
North Koreans made it all the way down to Busan.
Yep.
Then MacArthur comes in, and we get them all
Push
the way
them
up to the Yalu, then the Chinese come in, and then it kind of just settles at the 38th parallel.
Yeah.
38th parallel?
38th parallel, 39th parallel,
Something
like that, yeah.
Parallel, who the hell knows? So it's a little bit like that. So the front line was stabilized, but the Russians have been kind of on the move lately. But my point is that this whole idea that they send in thousands of men, like Pickett's charge or something, and they don't care how many men die. That is such a nonsense narrative. They've actually been very measured and risk averse in the last, like I said, 6-8 months, maybe even a year.
They're doing a really. Listen, he shook the tree with this war, right? So he shook the military tree in his country with this war. He got rid of the corrupt. He got rid of the incompetent. He got rid of the cowards. That's what he did.
Who are you talking about?
Putin. Right. So.
And he got rid of his opposition because they left the country.
Oh yeah.
So
you got rid of all these people, right? You got these people out of your way, and now you're able to wage a war, with the right leaders, with the right equipment, with the right tactics. And not just wage it, but actually evolve your military generations ahead of where they would have been had they not had this war.
Yeah.
So his military right now is as sharp as it's probably going to be in a very long time.
But I just hope for the sake of world peace that Putin doesn't give the Ukrainians what they want and overreact to this.
I think
he will.
I don't think so. I don't see him overreacting. I think there'll be a response, obviously. I think he'll try and crush that Ukrainian army that's pushing into his territory.
Oh, of course, that.
I think he's going to crush them. But I don't see him overreacting. I don't see him hitting Poland or pushing into areas he hasn't been in.
You don't see any chance of a declaration of war in Ukraine?
I don't think so. I think he'll just crush him. I don't think he'll waste time with that.
But Mikey's going to get so much pressure at home. He is a politician. He's going to get a lot of pressure at home.
It's true, but listen, he's been under pressure how many times before though, and I don't think he's necessarily had to go there. I think he's more authoritarian in that he's not going to waste time on the niceties. He's just going to go in and tell him crush that, and they'll crush it.
He is obviously at some level an authoritarian, but Russia's not a police state. It's not North Korea.
No, it's definitely not. No, it's
people there free to leave.
Yeah, no, it's not a police state at all. It's not authoritarian at all. I'm just saying him and his personality. He has some authoritarian leanings in his personality.
Of course, yeah.
And in their political system, it still has some you have some semblance of authoritarianism here and there. It pops up here and there in certain
he's an old Soviet.
Yeah, he came up with the KGB, right?
Yeah.
The aquarium, the GRU. But I don't think he's that guy. This guy's he came up through Russian intelligence services, KGB.
Right.
And he came up through the GRU, which is like their assassin squad. It's like the blackest of black. And he led the friggin' unit. So a guy like that, you don't get to that level and do the kinds of things you do in those kinds of places without being the calmest asshole in the room. You don't make knee-jerk reactions. You don't do things without having thought out every possibility.
I agree with you. I'm just my thought is that I do believe, again, knowing what I know about Russians, and it's not much, but I mean, knowing what I know about Russians, once the quote-unquote motherland is attacked,
no, they're going to unleash unholy hell.
you know,
but
they're gonna be on him for that, and I think Zelensky and maybe Biden are hoping that the Russian people are going to rise up against Putin and say, "See what you caused." I don't
Not
see
ever
it
gonna
that
happen.
way.
Never
I don't
gonna
think it's
happen.
going to be that way.
The military recruitment's going to skyrocket. People are going to join the military to go fight because they're going to be like, "Fuck this, we're done with this. We're going to end this now."
Mm-hmm.
So I think you'll see a surge in his recruiting. I think he will surge his military into Ukraine. I think he'll double the number he's got there.
If he has the numbers to double.
Oh, he does. He's got the capability. He could 10 times that
Well,
number if he had to.
you got to remember, there's a big difference sending conscripts. You know, the people that maybe
Without a
don't
doubt.
want to fight.
Without a doubt, but I think that this is their 9/11. I think this is going to inspire their people in their
Possibly.
9/11. It's going to cause a wave of patriotism from motherland, and you're going to see a wave of recruits join the Russian military to go fight that war because they're going to have that. This is their 9/11. This is their moment where they're going to be like, "Oh, is that right? Now we're going to come kick the shit out of you."
I think that's a possibility. I think that's a strong possibility.
Yeah.
And I also think it's, I mean, I would bet everything I have that the Ukrainians are going to launch a major, major offensive. I don't know that it'll be successful, but I do know it's going to be fucking bloody.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
going to be fucking
No, the
bloody.
next 3 months in Ukraine are going to be an absolute bloodbath. Regardless of what happens,
Yes,
it's just going to be an absolute bloodbath.
because they want to get it done before
because
the
this
U.S.
can't
election.
go right. They want to be done before the U.S. election, and this can't go unanswered. And Russia's going to fucking throw everything they have at it now.
Yeah, and I also think Ukraine's going to throw everything they have at it. I don't think we've even begun to see the pinnacle of this war.
No.
The pinnacle of death.
Not pinnacle of death. No, absolutely not.
And
You're going to see it now.
I do believe so.
Yeah.
I do believe so.
This is like the crescendo, right? We're coming to the end where it's going to kind of come up and then crash. You know.
But what Americans have to understand, especially the the millions of you who watch the Dirt Road every day, is you have to understand we don't have a choice. It's not like we could choose to be in this war or not at this point. It's up to the Russians. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it's on them.
They can get us into this war
Yeah.
at any point.
Yeah, they could drag us
And
right in with a declaration of war.
I truly believe that's what Zelensky wants. I truly believe that was his goal in this, incursion into Kursk, was to try to get Putin to do something so bad that it does cause World War III.
And that's the thing.
Because that's the only way he can win.
Right.
He
Well,
can't win on his own. He can't
No, he
win
can't.
without
He needs
NATO
us.
troops.
He needs NATO troops. He
Yes.
needs full, complete NATO support. So
Yes.
NATO troops on the ground fighting the war for him.
Right. We could give him all the weapons in the world, short of a nuke. It will kill more Russians, which will give Lindsey Graham his erection. It'll do that. It'll give them a better chance to defend themselves. But they're not getting the Russians out of that territory without American troops or NATO troops on the ground. And Zelensky's not a dummy. He knows that.
Yeah.
And he also knows that Americans don't like boots on the ground anymore,
No, you don't need it. Listen, I'm not anti-war necessarily, but to me, that should be the absolute last resort. And when you do have to resort to that level of violence, do the absolute minimum amount of violence you have to accomplish the goal you're trying to accomplish, and then pull back. Right? That's the way it should be.
Well, or the opposite, right? Go balls in and win it as quickly as possible. And that's why I go back to what I said before.
If you can do that and end it quickly, sure.
If this were truly about what Biden said it was about, right? If this was truly just about big bad country invading innocent country,
yeah.
then he should have done like Bush did when Iraq invaded Kuwait.
Build a coalition,
Give them a
get them in
deadline.
there, and get them out.
Right. Give them a deadline. Say, if you're not out by this date, we're
Push them
coming
back
in.
across the border.
And we go in. Because he knows we're at risk of World War III anyway. And at this point, that choice, like I said, is almost not even in our hands anymore. It's in the Russian hands. So he should have took the bull by the horn at the beginning. If this were really about good versus bad, right? Took the bull by the horn at the beginning, gave them a deadline, said get your troops out of this country by whatever date, or we're coming in. He couldn't have gotten a UN mandate because Russia would have vetoed it, but he could have done something else, gotten some other, I don't know, some sort of document to give him that sort of authority, have a coalition,
Sure.
gone in and done it. But doing this little by little by little by little here and getting to the point where it is spiraling out of our control. There's no way.
No, it's been out of our control, I think, a long time ago. But yeah, I agree.
Because Zelensky knows we need him now as much as he needs us, and I think he's just feeling himself, and I think that was the reason that he launched this attack. And who knows, maybe it'll work. I don't know. I doubt it, though.
No, I think not the only thing that comes out of this attack is going to be quite a bit of dying, you know. But like I said, I do think that for the Russians, this will be like their Stalingrad or their you know, their 9/11.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be
I
that
believe
this,
so,
this
too.
surge of, you know, that Russian pride, that patriotism, where it's going to draw out these people and this nationalistic pride, and they're going to be like, oh, they attacked our homeland now.
Right.
Now we have to go fight.
Right.
And you're going to see a surge in military recruiting, and they're going to push it right down to the Ukraine.
Maybe we're wrong. You know, maybe this does get the Russian population mad at Putin. I just don't think so. I mean, again, knowing what I know about that
Yeah, it just doesn't
particular
seem
group,
likely to me. Yeah,
I don't think so. And Zelensky being one of them, I think he knows full well that that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And that's why I think his main goal was to try to get Putin to do something so bad that
well, you look at
we get in.
Look at who Zelensky surrounds himself with, right? When he goes to all these different, like, you know, world forums or wherever he shows up in his stupid looking uniform thing that he wears, trying to make himself look harder.
Pisses me off. Show up in front of fucking Congress asking for $60 billion, doesn't put on a tie.
Yeah, he shows up like he's the field commander. I just came back from the battlefront. No, you didn't, you asshole. You're doing lines of coke off your boyfriend's ass and fucking 100 miles from any kind of shot fired and angry douchebag. But besides that, this guy surrounds himself with, you know, Alex Soros and all these other globalists, like, you know, WEF people and things like that. He's not aligning himself with anybody that's out for any kind of good intent. He's aligning himself with the globalists and the destabilizers that we've seen over the last 10 years, trying to literally turn everything inside out in the world.
Absolutely.
So I think that that tells you exactly who he is and what his intentions are. I think he knows what he's doing is very, very inflammatory and very much is designed to spark off a world war. He wants U.S. troops. I think you're absolutely right. I think he wants NATO troops on the ground in Ukraine.
Oh, absolutely, because that's the only way he could really, you know, get the Russians fully out of there. But I think Americans have to at some point ask themselves a question: are you willing to send your kids off to fight in this?
No.
If it comes to that, are you really there? You know, you're waving the Ukraine flag and everything. Are you really willing to do that? And even, by the way, just one more point, Mike.
Yep.
Even if it's not our boots on the ground, or if there's no draft or anything like that, the way that Americans, there'll be cyber attacks. You know,
yeah, it's fifth generation warfare now. It's not all
what are you
just.
Going to do when you wake up and you have no access to your bank account and your credit cards aren't working? You know, people just think like, we send the soldiers off to the other side of the world and we don't feel
This
it.
isn't World War II.
Those
We're
days
storming
are
the
over.
beaches of Normandy now. Now they're storming the banks on the internet.
So I don't think Russian missiles are going to come into New York. That's not what worries me. But I'll tell you right now, again, you're talking about severe cyber attacks, things like that.
Infrastructure.
Right.
Electrical grid shut down. You know, rail lines shut down. Like, look, we saw that already, right? Not that long, a couple of years ago, a Russian hacker crew held a rail system for ransom here in the U.S. They shut it down. They accessed their systems. They locked them out of their own systems. They made them pay a ransom to get their systems back. Otherwise, they would keep it shut down. So the airlines will get attacked again. The infrastructure will get attacked again. There's 1,000 ways to fight a war now. Right. It's not like it was.
So are Americans willing to deal with that so that Lugansk could be part of Ukraine instead of part of Russia? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I agree.
You know, it doesn't make any sense.
I agree, and I don't think anyone is.
Look, you know, that's just my opinion. Everybody's entitled to their own opinion. I just really wish people would look more into this, because this is, I think, the most dangerous point the world's been at. And God, I think this is worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Oh, by far.
You know? And at least we had a freaking leader back then that was willing to
stand in the line and do the right thing. Absolutely. Listen, this is 100 times worse than the Cuban Missile Crisis. And not even that. I think that we're closer to nuclear war in a sense, although we are. Sure. But just because of the sheer amount of death that will erupt from this, the sheer amount of disruption in world markets and everything. You think the supply chain problems we had during COVID were bad?
Yeah.
This will make that look like nothing, like romper room.
Absolutely.
It will absolutely eclipse that on a level that most people can't even fathom.
Are you all willing to do this? Are you all willing, even if that doesn't happen, has this been worth it? Has the couple of 100,000 that have died, you know, combined, is all the people displaced, all the land destroyed, is this worth it so that Ukraine could be part of NATO? I mean, can anybody really say that with a straight face?
What the hell strategic value does it give NATO? There's almost no strategic value there.
I don't know.
Do you know what there is value in? There's value in all the $1 trillion or so in resources that are there.
Yes.
That'll make people like Lindsey Graham, the scumbag, richer, or the defense industry, or
remember
BlackRock.
the drinking game. Every time he says Lindsey Graham, you got to take a shot.
Lindsey Graham. You got alcohol poisoning now. No, you know, you got all these different corporations that are going to make their money on this. And again, it comes back to the same thing. There's dirty money in politics, right? These people who are making money, and it's disgusting. It's absolutely sick. It's evil. It's sick. It's twisted. It has to stop. The dying has to stop.
It does. And we're at 45 minutes, Mike, and my ass is killing me. You got to get a better seat here on our farm.
We're going to get some better seats.
Say goodnight, Gracie.
Good night, Gracie.
What do you want him to do down there?
Comment. Let us know what you think about Ukraine, the war, all that good stuff. What else you got? And like and subscribe and let us know. Like I said, share it out. Let us know what your thoughts are. Let us know how you feel. Let us know what you see and what you thought.
And please read a newspaper. Look into this stuff.
Yeah.
If you think it's worth it, fine. You're an American. You have every right. I just don't think this is worth it. But
neither do I.
Whatever. What do I know? I'm sitting on a farm somewhere in New York City.
That's right. We're hiding. All right. Our hidden, invisible farm.
See you all next time.
Good night, guys.